Welcome to Deep Dive. I'm Kevin Benedict, your host today, and I want to thank all of you guys for joining. My guest today is my friend, Matt Smith. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Kevin, it's my pleasure.
Matt and I work together at Cognizant, and I was always so interested in the area he's responsible for. Matter of fact, he's practice lead for the conversational AI area at Cognizant. So Matt, we're going to have a fun discussion today.
It's a great topic, and I'm looking forward to it, Kevin.
So Matt, for those that don't know you and know your background, why don't you just give us an update and tell us about yourself?
Sure, glad to. So yeah, as you mentioned, with Cognizant, I've been here 5 years. Before that, I was running my own company with a couple of folks focused on the intelligent automation space. But I've been in and around the technology industry in one form or another for, dare I say it, about 3 decades now.
You and I both, man, and we can show the scars, can't we?
Yes, we can. That's a good way to put it.
So talk to us about the whole concept of conversational AI. What is that for those that aren't familiar with that term?
Yeah, well, let's kind of start with, most importantly, what it represents to let's say an end user or a customer. Right, and that's the idea of hands-free computing or screenless computing. So what is that really? If you think about the advances that have happened with digital assistants like Siri or Cortana or Google Assistant, or the intelligent speakers like Amazon Alexas, of course, everyone has become familiar with that. It's that idea of being able to engage with technology with your voice as the user interface. Versus the way we have been doing it really since PCs and computers took off, which was a keyboard and then a mouse, and then most recently a touch screen as the interface. So now our voices become the interface. So it enables a whole lot of things that previously you couldn't do, when suddenly your hands are free and you can move about a room or a vehicle and still engage with technology.
Oh, that's fascinating. So there's keyboards, there's touch screens, there's probably motion on some of the gaming systems that are out there. Yeah. And so these are all ways of interfacing with a machine, right? Right. And now we're building these algorithms that allow our language and the words we say to actually control what's going on in the computer, right?
That's right. Yep.
So what's involved in there? So you have conversation and you have AI. Let's kind of separate those first and then bring them back together. What has to be in the conversation component of that solution?
There's really two forms of conversation that have become the kind of the de facto, if you will, for conversational AI. And one is still traditional type out a message, and it may be you type it out on a keyboard, it may be you tap in a message in Facebook Messenger as an example, and you're interfacing with a chatbot, right? And so that would mean we've all seen those little windows pop up on a website.
Yes.
Where the virtual agent says, hey, Matt, thanks for popping onto our site. How can I help you find the product you're looking for? Or what questions can I answer for you? That's conversational AI happening. And
okay.
That chatbot is a form of interaction. Now, obviously, in a lot of cases, you can put your questions or your comments into that chatbot simply by speaking. And then a technology called speech to text is taking the words that you're saying, and it's converting that to what you would type if you were to sit down.
Got it.
So that chatbot is one form of conversational AI. And then, as I mentioned, there's also the screenless versions of conversational AI. So if you think about particularly in home today, you think about all the examples of voice-enabled devices. Most everyone is now familiar with speakers, intelligent speakers, whether it's Amazon Echo, Google Assistant, Sonos' product, and whether it's those kinds of devices, or more and more we're seeing whether it's televisions, the set-top box, appliances in the kitchen, smart wall switches, where you can voice activate those devices by simply giving them a command. That too is conversational AI. And in that case, there's no screen. There is your voice, and then there's technology that is part of those devices' back-end systems that allows them to translate those words into commands and actions that turn the lights on, turn them off, play your playlist, start the oven, those sorts of things.
Oh yeah, I've had the joy and the challenge of teaching my mom how to use a computer.
Yes.
And I remember the situation where I said, "Mom, just move the arrow up there and click on it." And she says
Right.
to me, "What does it mean to click on it?"
Right. Right.
He has no concept or context in which to understand that kind of computer use language. So I can see this has accessibility, of value. It has all kinds of value, doesn't it?
Yeah, and on the other end of the spectrum, from teaching our parents to use computers, one of my associates has told the story of the first words that his son has spoken. He's a year and a half old now. Was "Hey Google." So that's the new generation, right? We all kind of laughed as we watched our kids grow up with touch screens and handheld devices, phones, tablets, and so forth. And the next generation is going to look at that and just laugh, because it will have always been a voice-enabled world for them.
Oh yeah, and Matt, I wrote an article that the premise of the article was technology has to disappear. Right. For it to actually when technology is actually mature, it should disappear into the background.
Yeah.
It's only out front when we're still testing it and trying to figure out what we're going to do with it. But once everything is, understood and done, it should just vanish into the walls or into the, in dashboard of your car or somewhere. It should just go away. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we're starting to see that happen, right? I mean, and in a lot of ways, the technology that we grew up with as kids in the fiction world, whether it was Star Trek and Captain Kirk would just say computer, right? And they would ask the computer and it would give them data or coordinates or whatever, or, Lost in Space and Robot. And they had this conversation with Robot. And then, of course, Star Wars and R2 and C-3PO, that idea that you bring up, Kevin, where the technology becomes human and it's around us, and it's how we interact, and we don't have to think about it. We don't have to learn, C prompt. What does this mean? What does it mean to click? It's engaging on our terms, not on technology's terms. And we're now, starting to see that happen with a lot of these voice-enabled devices and the idea of conversational AI.
Oh yeah, I see the text-based AI as a big improvement too. I go back and forth to Mountain View, California from Boise, Idaho here a lot. When I open up the Uber app, it depends on the time of day. It just knows where I'm going. And it says, "Are you going to the airport?" It brings that up as the number one choice. At this time of day on a Thursday, you must be going home. So here it brings up and suggests, here's let's call a driver to come out and take you to the airport.
Right.
And I love that. And then the conversation is just on top of that.
Yeah.
So what goes into the conversation part of the technology? I mean, what's behind that?
Okay, so on the computer side, there's a few critical components, and they all get kind of lumped together under the term AI.
Yeah.
You have to have some form of technology that can take speech and convert it to text, because the computer systems, they still have to be interacting with data. So you convert speech to text, and which is data that the computers understand. So that speech to text component, there has to be a natural language understanding element then too, which doesn't require you to engage with the software in traditional terms of click here and type a command, but instead it's taking your natural language spoken commands, right? Just like you and I talk to each other, you want to be able to talk to Alexa that way. So there's a natural language understanding component, and then behind that is intent recognition. So right now, the idea of conversation with computers is to achieve something. It's to get some sort of action out of them. So what is the intent of what you're asking? Is it to get directions? Is it to play a specific song? Is it to turn on the lights? So that technology has to understand that intent that you've expressed.
Because I imagine if you had 10 people in the room, 10 people would all ask for Alexa to play a song maybe in different ways using different words.
Yeah,
so that's why the intent needs to be there, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so you have to have intent recognition, and then you have to have a way to convert that into action. And then in most cases, or in many cases, I should say, the computer, the technology needs to convert all that back into a response. So if you think about where that flow started with speech to text, it may go back the other direction now, and you've got a text to speech. So that's Alexa talking back to you and reading you commands, or reading you the directions for a recipe, or your assistant in your car giving you verbal directions on where to drive, how to get to a destination. That's the computer turning that data back to speech. So
to me, that's so fascinating. There's languages, there's accents, there's all those different kinds of things that can play a role in there, isn't there?
Yeah, and what's probably most remarkable is that essentially all of these technologies are happening in the cloud, right? So this broadband connection that we all have now, whether it's on our phones or within our homes with Wi-Fi, or increasingly in our vehicles, nothing that's occurring with conversational AI would be possible without that broadband connection, because the computing power that is required to make conversational AI as capable as it's become, and achieve the expectations people have for it, it requires a massive amount of hardware and software technology working together, and all that is sitting in the cloud as it's put. So you got to have a lot of connectivity and bandwidth to be able to drive that.
Wow. And then I imagine when you're talking to a device, the device itself has to have its own language. So you command your device to do something. It doesn't know if you tilt the jump rope.
Right.
You have to give it specific instructions that it's programmed to actually respond to, right?
Yeah, and that's where, again, another AI technology, the idea of machine learning, comes into play. So you can hard code, if you want to put it that way, the original set of instructions. You take 10 people and put them in a room and ask them all to ask the same question. They'll ask it 10 different ways.
Yes.
You can spend some time and hard code most of those guesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the different ways the question will be asked, and you'll never get all of them. So where AI again is coming into play is this idea of machine learning, that the responses that don't get the right reaction, the technology itself is learning that I didn't respond correctly because they kept asking me.
Yes.
Or it had to refer to some other source to respond the way that they were looking for. But the next time, it's learned, right? The machine has learned the right response to that intent or to that question. So you've got machine learning at the heart of this, and you mentioned algorithms, and so none of conversational AI would be possible either without these algorithms that are constantly helping these systems learn and get smarter.
Wow. So what are the primary value propositions? You as an expert there, everyone's coming to you and they're saying, Matt, where do people get the biggest bang for their buck with conversational AI? Where would you point them?
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at it. What most organizations are looking for, right? The companies that are investing in conversational AI, there's really two things they're trying to achieve. So one is revenue generation at its heart, and the other is cost reduction. So it's part of this continuation that we've been on with technology to make our businesses more efficient, to make them more responsive or more perceptive of what customers need. So conversational AI in many ways is simply the latest step down that path of being more responsive. And so businesses are looking, the return on investment that they're looking for is just that, have I increased sales? Have I converted more leads? Because this technology has enabled me to do that. or have I taken cost out of my business model because I'm now more efficient? But there's also another aspect of conversational AI that's really equally important, which is that of differentiation. And so we're moving into kind of a new era where if you don't have a screen to represent your brand or your company, um, and your customers are engaging with you across a screenless device using voice, how do I differentiate my company? How do I maintain that brand presence, so that I don't become disintermediated from my
Right.
customers? So the idea of conversational design and of customer experience as the new way to compete for brands
Yes.
is a very, very important aspect of what do organizations look to get out of it. So those are some of the primary areas of focus that we see companies want to achieve when they're looking to invest in conversational.
Oh, yeah. I can think of all kinds of businesses that just have regular business hours, but
Sure.
off hours, they can have a chat bot, if you would, or a conversational AI agent that can at least try to schedule people, direct them to the right link with the right links to the right websites, and then welcome or schedule them to have a call during the business hours when there's humans in the building. I can see all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all great examples.
Yeah. So what industries are you finding that are the early adopters out there that are just jumping on this and taking off with it?
Well, the ones that most of us see as consumers have been the early adopters. So a lot of retail businesses have moved very quickly into the idea of conversational AI, whether it's on their websites with chatbots, the idea of being able to, when you walk into a store, a couple of the projects we're working on that are in that area. We've all gone into a grocery store or a massive big box store and had a hard time finding what we're looking for, and you have a hard time finding someone who can help you locate it. So couldn't we use our phones with GPS, with the ability to simply ask a virtual assistant on a phone? It knows, as you pointed out earlier, it now knows where you are. So, help me find this item on the shelves. I'm looking for this brand of coffee, or I'm looking for,
Oh, yeah.
and it, not only does it tell you, look, it's on aisle 7 and it's on the 3rd shelf, but it can show you. It could bring up a virtual map, knows where you are, and so it brings together a lot of those. So that retail example is one where a lot of early investments and early adopters have moved in conversational. We're starting to see the trend, Kevin, towards more complex kinds of interactions, and so a lot of other businesses and industries are following. So banking and financial services is looking at the idea of personal financial advisors that are digital assistants that can help you make decisions on loan products or investment choices, and help you manage budgets and move money and things such as that. So that, examples like that, examples in the healthcare space, there's a tremendous amount of quality of life improvements that can be driven with the idea of conversational AI. So you look at the aging population that wants to age in place, as the term has become.
Absolutely.
So the idea of being able to provide healthcare advice and interface with people within their homes, and still provide round the clock care and support and monitoring, is really a very, very important area where I think we're going to see some just amazing products start to come to bear in that space. So healthcare is a big one, and we know from a lot of the things that we're seeing in the investments that they're looking very closely at how they can take advantage of these.
So we looked at industries, retail, healthcare, and something like that. Are there specific processes? Are they the processes that are the customer digital interaction area, the customer experience area? Is that where most of it's being deployed, or is there this whole industrial back end that people are using it on the plant floor?
No, it's well, it will be there. It will be there,
Yeah.
but so there's really two broad categories of business processes, if you want to think about it from a customer's perspective. The conversational AI can help, and one, which is where most of the work has been done so far, is in the idea of informational support. So you think about probably 8 or 9 out of 10 reasons why you go to a company's website. It's to get information. You're looking for specs on a product, you're looking to make a purchase and you want to compare models, you're
Right.
looking for a location where you can drive and drop something off. That idea of information retrieval, using conversational AI, and whether it's chatbots or voice assistants, to improve that information retrieval aspect has become a real critical area and early adopter for conversational. Where we're going next, though, is the idea of transactional, and actually being able to complete some sort of whether it's a purchase or schedule an appointment, or get financial advice and then do something with that advice. That transactional aspect, which, if you think about how that works in terms of the systems that enterprises require to operate, there's a lot more connections that are going to be required in most cases for transactional. But there's so much benefit from a customer point of view to be able to provide that kind of service as well through conversational technologies as the front end. So those two, informational is one, and then transactional is the other. Those are the two business processes that are primary right now.
So, Matt, it just occurred to me that as you're having more and more of these kind of conversations with AI systems on the back end, and there's less human interactions, are there actually the need for authenticating and voice recognition and that kind of thing, so that you're able to complete transactions and stuff in an audio environment only?
Yeah, that you bring up a great point, Kevin, in terms of what makes transactional more challenging. And so if you go back to the purchase example, even if it's something like tickets to a movie,
Yeah.
there's a credit card transaction that's going to be involved. So in the way we've done it to date, you could pull up on your phone a movie theater's website and you could tap in your credit card to purchase tickets.
Right.
But if you want to use voice and you're sitting in a room with other people, you probably don't want to read your credit card.
4469.
So the traditional ways that we've used or that we've required security or authentication aren't going to work in a screenless or hands-free world. We know that pins won't work. You won't want to read your pin out loud. So other technologies are coming along, again, enabled by AI. So a lot of the biometric capabilities. So whether
just put your thumb on your
your thumb or your fingerprint on the home key on your phone, or you take a picture of your face and facial recognition says, yes, this is Kevin, and Kevin's allowed to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to see more and more adoption of that, and as those technologies become increasingly secure and capable to provide the level of security and privacy that individuals are going to expect, we'll be able to make another big leap in capability from a conversational AI point of view.
Got it. So talking about leaps there, that's a great segue into, let's talk about how a conversational AI has matured over the last 5 years till today, and then where do you see it going in the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, the last 5 years and really the last 2 or 3 have been, kind of, we've moved past pure experimentation and kind of the novelty of speech recognition. So, whether it's talking to Siri or talking to Alexa, we've all now realized this can work. And so this kind of era of experimentation, we're moving though into the idea of conversational AI being everywhere. And this is going to bring about what you mentioned earlier, which is the idea that technology fades into the background. And so if you look at the home environment, whether it's light switches, appliances, entertainment systems, it can all be voice enabled. You'll have that technology everywhere kind of concept. Same thing in the work environment, where whether it's accessing a conference room or looking up resources in Outlook, or accessing data and getting informational reports, all that'll be voice enabled. So the idea of conversational AI being kind of niche and point solutions to being essentially everywhere we're right at the cusp of that starting to take presence. And so that's really, we're seeing 2019 as kind of a breakpoint year from experimentation to AI everywhere.
Oh, wow.
We'll just see it continue from there. Yeah.
So where's the next 5 years going to take us, Matt?
Well, the idea of connected products and conversational AI coming together is certainly going to happen. We're going to see less and less requirements for keyboards and touchscreens and more voice enablement. We'll see the idea of security becoming more and more capable because of voice recognition or biometric, other forms of biometric. And we're going to see this idea of personal agents beginning to represent more and more of our lives, as well as these technologies kind of merge and meld together. The idea of having 50 apps on our phone goes away, and you simply ask your personal agent to do all the things that you might have tapped a bunch of apps for.
Absolutely.
So we know that a lot of those things are coming, and the idea of people talking to computers, but also our virtual agents talking to each other is going to become more and more of the way things will happen on a transaction basis. So you mentioned before that Uber knows where you are at a point in time, and therefore he probably wants a ride to the airport.
Yes.
What if it knew your whole day?
Yeah.
And your virtual assistant knew you were going to be at all the points throughout your day. It knew what sorts of services you might require at each of those different points, and all that could simply happen in the background. And you never needed to go tap an app to do this or do that. We know that that's coming as well. That idea of virtual agents kind of helping to manage and facilitate our days throughout the course of all the transactions we have. That's where it's going.
Oh, that's fascinating. Matt, I want to thank you so much for taking your Friday afternoon and sharing all your brilliance with us.
Thank you, Kevin. It's always a pleasure to talk, and I look forward to doing this again with you.
Terrific. And I want to thank everyone out there that tuned in for being with us as well.